Hey everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. This is different today on the show. We're actually in a studio. Tori actually suggested this space and it's so far pretty incredible. So I want to thank you for that. But I want to talk about Tori a little bit here because I recently had the honor of getting connected with you, and she's moved from Atlanta to Vegas. And since I've met her, I've felt nothing but warmth and inspiration and just uh, a, a commitment to the work. And that's what I really, really respect so far and admire. And I'm excited to dive deeper. But a little bit about Tori is she's the host of the Coachable podcast. She's one of TikTok's top 100 female creators, award-winning content creator, trauma-informed breathwork facilitator, high-performance coach. Her work reaches nearly 1 million people worldwide. She has worked with international brands like Nature Made, Canva, and BetterHelp, and was also named top 10 female mindset coaches by Yahoo News in 2020, just to name a few things that you've done. So welcome to the show, Tori.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here in person and just continue to grow my network and have opportunity just to like develop more and know more about you too. So I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So usually I do a rapid fire kind of series here before we get going into the meat and stuff of the episode. So first question, I kind of already answered it for you. Where were you born and raised?
Born in Columbus, Mississippi, but raised in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So I'm a Southern girl through and through.
Oh, I don't know why I said Atlanta.
I lived in it. You weren't wrong. I lived in Atlanta for the last 7 years.
Got it. Okay. What's a philosophy that you live by?
Oh, man. You can't heal what you hate. Yeah.
Love that. That's good. What's your definition of failure?
I don't know if I subscribe to that. It's an illusion. Yeah.
What does the world need more of right now?
Presence.
Agreed. One of my favorite things. What's a game-changing book that you've read recently or in the past?
Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
What's a solid piece of advice that you have received recently or in the past that has served you well?
Oh, so many. Watch what people do more than listen to what they say. Yeah. If you want to get to know someone, watch what they do.
Good. I mean, lets you know if they're in integrity, right?
For sure.
Last thing, what did you have to, and this is a loaded question, so I don't expect you to go super deep unless you want to with it. What did you have to give up or sacrifice in order to get to where you are today?
Gosh, who I thought I was. Yeah. I think part of it is dying to your idea of yourself so that you can step into the truth of who you are and that highest potential. And so it's like a continual releasing and letting go of my need to control outcomes and be in control of my life.
Right.
I would not be here if I stayed on the straight and narrow. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for those answers. Beautiful answers. Let's springboard off of the control piece, the certainty piece. I think most people, if not all people, have such a strong craving for certainty. They want to be able to predict. They want to know things are going to work out. They want to know that if they say yes or no to this opportunity, that there's some favorable thing on the other side. How have you handled that? Or how do you go about communicating to yourself when entering uncertainty or taking a leap, or in this case, maybe reinventing yourself, letting go of something and stepping into something new?
Yeah, I think this has been a continual lesson that life has presented me over and over again. And every time it's like, at least in this past like 3 or 4 years, I've been aware of it where I'm like, okay, this is one of those opportunities where life is asking me to let go and to trust and to deepen my faith and my trust in a supportive, loving power that is greater than me.
Yes.
And that has my best interest in mind. And I think we grow up in a society and in a culture where we think we have to fend for ourselves, like it's up to us, that like if I want to have something, if I want to create something, it's up to me and I've got to do it. Or I've, there's no one coming to save us. That's that's kind of the message. And agreed, I think we have to take full responsibility for our lives and our circumstances and what we decide to do about that. But there have certainly been moments where I felt like I hit a ceiling or a wall in terms of my potential or what I was experiencing relationally or financially or in my career. And always to get to the next phase, it's required me to give up, as you were just asking, give up what I thought I knew or the way I thought it was going to go, my plan per se, and be willing to step into something that feels, and a lot of times like you're kind of walking around in the dark trying to get your bearings a little bit. And that is a place where most people run from, much less they don't put themselves in that situation like willingly. It's oftentimes something like life forces you to do. And when you keep trying to pursue your plan and it doesn't work out, it's like, what are you going to do? So one of the things I realized very young, younger than most, is that life is uncertainty. Like that is its nature. Almost like Peter Crone says, like water is wet. Life is uncertain. I could never have told you when I woke up this morning, I would get a phone call that would change my life today, but I did. And that is something I couldn't have predicted. I couldn't have planned. Could I have hoped for it? Maybe, but I didn't know that was going to be the outcome. You and I don't know what you're going to ask me next. You know what I mean? And I think there's something to be said about planning and being prepared for things, but also understanding that life. It will present you with things that you're not expecting. And I think our power lies in how do we learn to adapt to the unfolding of life as it's presented to us. Because when we try to grip on to the way we want it to go and the way we expected it and our expectations, that's when we experience suffering. It's when our expectations don't get met, right? And you can see that in your relationships. As soon as your husband or your wife doesn't do what you expected them, you're like, what the heck, Yeah. But we tend to do that with life all the time. And then we're disappointed or we're upset. And so for me, it's about how can I learn to be more like water and flow with the unfolding? Because the moment I try to attach to it and hold on to it is the moment that I get in my own way. And I block the blessing, the lesson, the thing that wants to come forward and come through in my life because I'm still attached to the way things were. And so that sounds like a little ethereal, but it like practically has looked like sometimes like withholding the urge to do something I want to do. Maybe, maybe in my relationship, it's like I have this need to like keep it together, but life is saying, hey, it's okay to let it go. It's okay to let them go in this direction and you go in this direction. And I think our fear around releasing something comes from a deeper fear of, am I going to be okay? And I think a lot of people live with this level of anxiety all the time and this need to control because they don't have a trust or a belief or a faith in something that says it's going to be okay. And if we could embody that, if we could actually allow ourselves to tap into a frequency in which we believe that everything is working for us and that actually no matter what happens, it's okay. There is a peace that you can experience despite circumstance. And I think that's real success when you can get to that point.
Because then it's an internal game and you can always control the inside.
Exactly.
Have you seen Stutz?
No.
It's a documentary on Netflix. He's a psychiatrist, and do you know who Jonah Hill is? Yeah, it's Jonah Hill's psychologist.
Okay.
And he like documents his journey with him.
Cool.
And one of the things he shares like multiple frameworks within that, but one of them is the 3 life certainties. It's like no matter who you are, what age you are, what demographic, life will give you these 3 things. One of them is uncertainty. 2 is pain, and 3 is work. No matter what you do, you're going to have those 3 things. And so, when we talk about leading a life or building something on your terms, like the more you accept that that's just a part of life,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes it easier to navigate or find resources or find support groups that help you move through things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I think it's our attachment to the progress, the momentum, the things that we do end up creating, because I think that there's so much pleasure and joy and power that comes in making a decision saying, hey, I don't want this anymore. I want to create something new. And then actually seeing that come to fruition. And we can then get attached to that and be like, look what I did, look what I created. But what happens if you get an unexpected phone call one day? I mean, those uncertainties were my reality. And so I live very up close and personal with that, the potential that is always at my doorstep, and to never get too comfortable. It's been interesting though, because I experienced a chain of loss over the course of a few years. I lost my mother, my sister, 3 grandparents, and uncle, and lived through an F4 tornado, all of which I didn't ask for and were beyond my control, right? These were things that were uncertain, unplanned, unpredictable things. You get a call and now cancer's entered your life. You wake up one day and you go to school and now there's a tornado in your backyard. And so those are things that you don't see coming. And in my world, I call that the hit. In Coachable, I talk about life as a game. And it's like that hit you don't see coming. It's when you get knocked out and you can't catch your breath. And you're like, okay, how do I start to get up? And for a lot of us, when we get hit, you get disoriented. You're like, I'm a little woozy right now. I don't even know, catch my bearings. But those things over the course of years showed me it's always that close, even though a lot of us live in a world where we think it'll never happen to me. I had that awareness very young. But one of the lessons I've had to learn, and I think anyone who's experienced some traumatic level of loss like that might relate in some way, which is the flip side of that coin, which is actually you're allowed to enjoy your life. You're actually allowed to relax. Because when you're always like, oh, what's that next thing that could be uncertain, that could bring this house of cards tumbling down, you kind of live very hyper vigilant,
right.
Like what's the next thing that could go quote unquote wrong? Or what's the monster under the bed that I don't know is there? And for me, the healing journey has looked a lot like, hey, it's okay. And there isn't always something that's coming to ruin the day. You're allowed to enjoy this season. You're allowed to be here and fully be alive and be present in this moment without protecting yourself 24/7.
How often do you reference all the things that you've been through to reinforce your resiliency, your strength, your determination, all of that? Is it something that you consciously do, or do you think it's just over the years of you personally developing, it's just kind of embedded in there now?
Yeah, I think I reference it more when I'm asked about it.
Okay.
More than anything, because I get, I talk a lot about, and part of my work and my career now is telling my story and telling about how I came to some of these ideas and understandings personally. So I reference it a lot in that way. But day to day, and when life presents me with people or circumstances that are kind of bringing and activating something in me, whether it's a fear, an insecurity, a limiting belief, something like that, I refer back to times in my life where I'm like, how does this feel familiar, right? What is this reminding me of? Because I can use that as information and as data for how to move forward and move through it in a healthy way. And I just remember that I have breathed through and lived through all of my hardest days. Like there's nothing I haven't gotten through yet. And so when things feel overwhelming, which they do,
and they probably will,
and they will continue to, because life is cyclical and seasonal. And because
right.
I have a tattoo right here on my neck that says, "This too shall pass."
Mm-hmm.
I self-reference a lot in that regard because I've needed some of these reminders. Because on those days where you're in it, it feels like it's going to last forever. And I have to have a reminder that, hey, it's all temporary.
Mm-hmm.
The good and the bad. So when things are really bad, it's like, this is not going to last forever. And when it's really, really good, be so deeply grateful and present and in it.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to soak it all up, because it doesn't last forever. And that's the beauty and the contrast of life in the, the duality of life.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I know trauma is something that you talk about, and loss can be experienced as trauma in many different ways.
Sure.
What is something that people don't know that they should know about trauma from your perspective?
Trauma is not just what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. I think trauma, we talk about it in terms of being an overwhelming flood or something that happened. It was too much, too soon, too fast. The nervous system couldn't regulate it, couldn't process it, couldn't integrate everything it was experiencing at once. And so that energy gets stuck in the body. And as I kind of mentioned earlier in one of your rapid fire questions, is a motto that I live by, is we can't heal what we hate. And I've come to that conclusion because in my hatred of the thing that hurt me, or the way that I am as a result of the thing that happened to me, maybe I'm hypervigilant, maybe I'm on guard a lot of times, maybe I'm constantly looking for what's the thing that could go wrong here. I could hate that about myself. Be like, I wouldn't be this way if that hadn't happened, right? But I think in that is an energy of rejection and of saying it's wrong that I'm this way. And we can't heal from that state. We've actually got to bring compassion and love and empathy into it and say, hey, it's actually not wrong that you're this way. It actually makes sense. It's actually right. Actually, your body and your brain is very intelligent. It's trying to keep you alive. And it's actually doing the exact thing it feels like it needs to do to predict something that might happen in your future to keep you alive.
Right. So
instead of making it wrong, can we actually see that it's useful and it's served a purpose? And it might not be serving you now, but we don't have to hate it. We don't have to judge it. And in so doing that, we soften that part of us that feels the need to be so rigid and so that is afraid, really. It softens and it feels a little bit more safe because it's really our own judgment of it and of ourselves that continues to alienate and isolate it and says, it shouldn't be this way. I lived a lot of my life thinking it shouldn't be this way. And I know someone listening can think back into something that happened in their lives, whether someone betrayed you, whether you lost someone that you love, whether you were fired from a job or didn't get the job that you thought you deserved, whatever it is. And you think, shouldn't be like that. Shouldn't have happened that way. Shouldn't have went down like that. What I realized is that perspective puts me in the seat of God in the sense that I think I know how life should be, right? That's like saying the sun should be over there, right? It shouldn't be in this part of the sky. It should be over there. And that goes back to that idea of control. I need to be in control, and that I am only happy if life follows and unfolds according to the way I see fit.
Right.
So I've had to learn that actually I'm not God and I don't want to be God. I can't be God. But that's required me to become a little less like hands off and be willing and allowing life to unfold. But to answer your question about trauma, I think it's one of the biggest lies that people believe is that time heals all wounds. And I don't believe that. I think it's, one of those snake oil salesman kind of pitches where it's like, just wait it out. It's what we're saying is actually, if I can get enough distance from that trauma or that event, then I'll be quote unquote healed. But it really is, that is stored in your nervous system and in your body. And whether you realize it or not, it's going to show up in the things that upset you, trigger you. It'll leak out in different ways. And I really believe that it's only love applied to those wounded places that actually heals us.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Presence, you mentioned, is something that this world needs more of. I agree with you. And so it sounds like you value presence. What led you to, one, the word, two, what it means, and three, like embodying that? Like when did that become important to you?
Yeah. I think before it took on like a spiritual meaning to me, when I was younger, I was always so attracted to people who had a presence about them, right? I grew up in a town.
And is that like what you felt around them? Is that like?
I think it can be described in a couple ways. If someone walks in the room and you've ever heard someone say, man, like they've just got a presence about them, what does that really mean, right? Yes. I think what that's, for me, that is saying that something about them, I would say more so, it's a more so energetic thing than anything else, is it that it demands your attention. It's asking for your attention. And it's worthy of your attention for whatever reason. But it draws you to take where you were focused and turn it towards them. And so I was always really inspired and interested in people that could be captivating in that way, whether it was speakers, whether it was athletes, whether it was specifically speakers. I would always be like, wow, what is it about them that's so captivating? And I wanted that. I thought it was attractive. I thought it was inspiring. And so I think that's how it started for me, in wanting to kind of embody that myself, because one of the mottos that I live by is to leave people and places better than I found them. So I want my presence to leave a space or conversation or something better than I found it. And I want that presence to then be felt when I'm not here. That someone can say, hey, that interaction made a difference on me. That conversation, I'll think about that again when she's not around. That to me is a legacy that is worth leaving. And so because I've thought a lot about death and about legacy and how I will be remembered, presence was a part of that. Yeah. Because you can feel presence when it's gone. Right. When someone, I remember being with my sister and my mom both. We took my sister off life support about 2 weeks after that tornado came through our home. And I remember being with her and feeling her presence, and then her presence leaving, transitioning. And I was still with her body, but her presence wasn't there. So I realized that presence is not just located here in my body. It's a spiritual thing. I'm a spiritual being in a human body having a physical 3D experience. So that got me very interested in, okay, so what is my presence, my soul, the thing that animates this body actually, that touches someone's heart. Yeah. And that has been the journey I've been on since then. And so when I say I think the world needs more presence, I think what I'm saying is I think people need to be connected to their heart and connected to obviously this moment. Yes. Because it's fleeting, Right. It can be here and then it's not. Yeah. And then what's left?
I mean, what I love about what you said is that it's multidimensional. It's not just here, it's bigger, right? And I do agree with that. I also think that presence allows you to get out of the linear model of time. where you're not analyzing the past or you're not anticipating the future,
Totally.
but you're co-creating with life.
Where life is being lived here.
Exactly, which is all we have.
Exactly.
Right? So you enter this like vertical eternity
Totally.
where possibility
Who is it?
exists.
Is it Eckhart Tolle? I can't remember if it was Eckhart Tolle. It calls it the eternal now.
Yes, the eternal now. Yeah. And like, so if we look at it from tomorrow never comes because when it gets here, it's today.
Right.
It makes sense logically and hopefully in your heart as well that in order to live life and squeeze as much as you can out of it, wherever you are, both in good and in bad, right now is where that happens, you know? And so when I like presence, I would say is my number one value. So when I'm with people, I want to be fully there. I want them to feel like all of me is in this moment, that there's nothing else more important than this conversation that we're having. And through that, I listen more. Right. I ask the question that keeps this tight. I learn, I share, we're able to co-create at something that may not be possible if I'm in my head.
Right.
Analyzing or being insecure or allowing fear to creep in and all that kind of stuff. So presence has been super near and dear to my heart. How much of presence do you think is correlated to success?
I think...
Or is it correlated?
I think it is, because I don't think you can be present without being aware. And I think you need... Self-awareness is like the number one thing in terms of ability to truly be successful. And the way I define success, probably different than most people do. You know, you just said something about presence being multidimensional and getting you out of linear time, which I love, because most of us think we're not in an intimate relationship with life. We're in an intimate relationship with our mind, thinking about the future, thinking about the past, and life is, like you said, happening here. And in order to be present, what you're doing is you're bringing your awareness to this moment. And that is where the creation happens. For me, success is not just about creating external circumstances or being able to manipulate circumstances for my good or for the greater good. It's also about integrity and alignment within myself, because I've lived a life that looked really good, that didn't feel really good. So for me, success looks like living a life that feels as good as it looks. It's about having a business that feels as good to operate as it does to bring in revenue every single month. It's about being in relationships with people that are co-regulatory and nourishing and reciprocal, right? Because we know how it doesn't feel good to only be giving and in circumstances and not have that reciprocation. So I think it is directly linked and correlated in terms of presence and awareness. And from this space, that's where your power lies, power to change, to transform, and to create whatever you want.
And to create, I want to double click on that too, because if you're only transferring back from the past to the future, chances are you're just creating more of what you know. Right? Which I don't know if that's creation. The way I look at creation is like something new. Something that builds on top of maybe something that existed before, but it's different, you know? And the only way to do that is with a blank canvas in some way.
Right.
Which means this new moment right now is a chance to do something that you have never done before to a level degree that has never been attempted. Whatever that means to you, right? That could mean I want to be stronger in this way. So this moment is an opportunity to do that in a different way.
Right.
Or to do that in a better way or a greater way or whatever it is that your definition is, you know?
Sure.
And so I think that success and presence are extremely correlated. And the more present you are in your pursuit or in your attraction of success, the more sustainable it becomes, but also the bigger the ripple. Because you understand what you're doing more when you're in it. So that you can explain it.
And you're present to what works and what doesn't work.
Correct.
And how to adapt and what needs to be,
tweaked
refined, a little bit.
Yes.
Because if you're not present to that, then you're unaware of it.
Right.
And you can't change what you're unaware of.
Exactly. So you're living off of default.
Exactly.
Right. And so going back to sovereignty, like there's nothing more sovereign than knowing that you can make a decision, that you're making the decision, and you're in the creation of what that decision brings. Like, so cool.
Yeah.
And when you operate from that, then you understand that regardless of what happens, good, bad, and different, this is something I chose.
That's the word. I think, and that's the crux of what I teach, is the whole game of life about being human. The kicker is that we get to choose. It's like, choose your own adventure. You know what I mean? We wake up every day and you get to decide what you're going to do with the time that you have. That amount of time is uncertain to us all.
Sure.
You can have an awareness of that or not. But you get to decide, am I going to be sitting here thinking about my list of things I need to get done, or am I going to be willing to let that be and be here? And that's a choice.
Yeah.
Everything is a choice. Everything you say yes to, you're saying no to 100 other things that you could have said yes. And I think that's the whole idea is, can we become responsible and accountable for our choices? That is what real leaders do.
Absolutely.
Right? If you want to talk about leadership, it's not,
Yes.
it's real leaders don't play the blame game. And it's like, oh, well, this happened because you didn't show up here. It's like, how have I been responsible for, how can I be responsible for the choices that I've made that have been part of getting us to this point?
Yeah.
And in the whole game analogy, I was like, if you want to be a champion, if you truly want to be that 1%, because not everyone is, exceeding at the highest levels, look at what they do. And what they do is they are responsible for their time, their schedule, what they're putting in their bodies, their sleep, their habits, their screen time, all of the things that I would call the practice of life. Like, what are you practicing every day? Because you're going to play like you practice. You're going to show up when it's game time, and you're going to do and repeat the habits and the rituals that you've been doing, whether you were aware of them or not. So can we bring awareness and presence to what we're doing, and then be willing to say, hey, this is working, this is not. And for the things that aren't working, let's adjust.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, in your ability to do that then creates like a open roadmap for continued success.
How much courage do you think it takes to live that type of lifestyle? First, I guess courage towards presence, to be present in this moment, to create, to surrender, to be here, whatever. And then courage to live, let's say, the 1% lifestyle, or just to be top notch in whatever it is that you do.
I think it takes a lot of courage to be here, because everything in our culture and our society is inviting you not to be.
Explain.
The highest form of currency now is not money, it's your attention. Your phone is asking you for your attention. Your kids are asking for your attention. Your wife, your spouse, your job, everything is pulling on you to say, be here, think about this, plan for this. You know what I mean? And so it's almost an act of defiance to be here, right? And it takes self-control. It takes discipline at times. And it takes courage. Because also what I've found in my own life and in my work with high performers and people of all kinds, honestly, is that we run from this moment.
Yes.
Because we've never been taught how to be here. And two, we have an idea that if we are here, it's going to be very scary and uncomfortable, because we've only ever learned how to be in our heads and be thinking about the next thing or reminiscing on what was. We haven't had the teachers and the mentors and the examples of deep, loving awareness. Just like, be here with you, be here now, like Ram Dass talks about. So I think we're afraid of it. we're afraid of what we don't know, or what we don't understand. And so I've watched myself and my clients like over time just run from their own internal world. Because if I slow down enough and get still enough, I don't know what's underneath the surface.
Right. Or I'm afraid to fully be seen.
Yes.
And what's interesting in my kind of thought and research and all this is that I think that that's one of the biggest fears why people don't become present is like, if I am and I'm vulnerable and someone sees that, then they could reject it, not love it, whatever. But what's interesting is that when you're fully present, you're not even thinking about you.
No.
You is not even a thing.
Yeah.
Like you're so not you that you're whole. You're one with everything, everyone, which I think is like a void sort of that is uncomfortable because the mind wants to be able to understand something. It wants to be able to say what it is so it can predict it, so it can like control it, so it can
protect from
it. But if you don't even know what it is that you're trying to protect yourself from, that's like the ultimate exposure.
Right.
But it's also the ultimate freedom.
And unifier.
Yeah. And to your water analogy, that's what it is. It just flows, which is why athletes, when they're in their zone, they call it, I just flow. I'm not thinking, I'm just being.
Yes.
Right. And that is actually our most optimized state of mind.
I would say that that's very, very closely linked. Presence is a prerequisite for connection.
Yes. 100%.
If you want to have deep, loving connection in your life, if you feel lonely, if you feel like you're the only one in a room of crowded people, if you feel like no one gets me, no one understands me, I would love community, but, I can't seem to find that. Ask yourself, what is my level of presence in the relationships that I'm in? Because your presence invites someone else. It's an invitation.
It evokes it, yeah.
It's an invitation for someone else to come be with you and to meet you in that moment. And that's intimacy. And we can have intimacy of all kinds, but into me you see, you can't have presence, you can't have connection without that.
I love that.
So yes, to answer your question, it takes a ton of courage to be seen, to be intimate, to connect. And there's an inherent risk in that someone can say, I'm not willing to be vulnerable and to be here in this moment with you, or I don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
Some people just don't have the capacity or the awareness yet to be in that space. And that's also part of their journey, and that's also okay. But yeah, it takes a lot of courage. So I think the connection piece is really, really linked to presence. And you were talking about flow state. I think presence is also intricately interwoven into play. Because when you think about children that play, they're not thinking about time.
Right.
Right. They're not thinking about how long do I, what I mean? They're just in it, and time kind of goes out the window. And if you can think about something in your life where you kind of lose track of time, whether it's reading a book or listening to a podcast or in nature, traveling, whatever it is, that's when you follow that.
Yes.
Follow that and start to pay attention to that, because you've tapped into presence and a flow.
Yes.
Where other things feel a little bit more rigid and forced and hard for you.
Right.
So pay attention to where you kind of lose track of time.
And to add on that, I think novelty is huge, like newness, and what's more new than this moment?
Right. Yeah.
And who you've become that led to this moment.
That's where you get to play with life. Yes. That's where it becomes so fun.
Right.
Where you're just like, somebody used to say, I can't remember who it was. They were just like, I would wake up and be like, I can't wait to be surprised by life. Basically, it's just like in the moment, like you just get to be with the natural next new novel moment, and the next person that walks into your world, the next interaction that you have, it gets to be surprising and exciting instead of redundant,
right,
and
scripted,
predictable.
Right.
That's boring.
Exactly. Yeah. So what's something that you've wanted to talk about on a podcast but haven't yet, or something that's new that you're kind of like thinking about You're like, you know what's fascinating me right now is this.
Ooh, interesting. I've been talking a lot about the messy middle lately. So one of the things I have noticed in the seasons are changing right now, right? We just are leaving winter, we're coming into spring. And I have also very much internally been experiencing that transition. And we talked earlier about letting go. So there's a period of time where when you get this revelation, right, where maybe like what I'm doing is not working, or something's got to change, or I need to go to the next level, or life's asking me to expand. Life's asking me to grow. We all get those nudges and those pings. And I felt that, I feel that continually in different ways, but I felt that a lot last year as I was getting my footing and my grounding here in Vegas. And I went and spoke at a conference in Nashville not too long ago. And I saw a man there who I'd never met in person, but he knew me at the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. We had talked before. And he said, you know, Tori, when I saw you a couple years ago, you were being planted. And now you're flourishing and you're blossoming in all these different ways. And I could see what he meant by that. And also at the same time, I felt myself being planted again in that season, like of something new wants to come forward and be born. And so this messy middle is like, for me, when you get planted, or a dream, a desire, a mission, something that you want to bring forward into the world, you go into the darkness. A seed gets planted in the darkness, right? And then it gets watered, and there's a germination process and all of this. And it can feel really scary because it is that uncertainty. You don't know how it's going to come into form. You don't know how it's going to take shape or take root. You just know this is what I'm being called to. This is what I'm committed to, and my intention is. And I'm also just going to put one foot in front of the other every day. And there can be a string of time, like a period of time, where that feels like all you're doing. And that actually you're like, am I making progress? Does this matter? Putting in the reps, showing up, doing the routine, And I think part of that for me has been about learning to deepen my trust muscle.
Yeah.
Because I have felt like I've been in this messy middle. I just moved, and I told my friend the other day, I'm like, I'm not here, but I'm not there yet. Yeah, I'm not I'm not like in my old house, but I'm not fully in my new house yet. I was in the middle. I was in between places. And that can feel ungrounding a lot. And so I've been trying to find grace and compassion and purpose in that middle, instead of needing to have the certainty. Of like, I know I'm on the path, and I know I'm doing all the right things to get where I want to go. Because sometimes you don't have the clarity yet.
Yeah.
Like around, some people are like, what do you want to do? Or what do you want to create? Or what do you want this next year to look like? And that hasn't fully come into focus yet. And so it's in that messy middle that I think our faith, for me, my faith was tested and is tested, of like, do you trust me?
Yeah.
Do you trust me? Life is asking me, do you trust me to the timing of your life is perfect?
So what I'm thinking about in my mind is like, you have the beginning of where you came from, and then the end of where you're trying to go in the messy middle. That's like a conversation for me.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I think about. I think of like, okay, we started this podcast. Now we're in
the middle.
Yeah. Right. And then there's an end because we have time and all that. But like, it's in the middle that I think one can extract the most lessons if one is present and maybe loves part or all of that messiness. Because it's through the messiness that you learn the organization, that you sharpen the awareness around what that means or what this means, and the trust and all the belief that when you do get to the destination, you appreciate it more. And then that becomes a springboard to another messy middle. So it's like we spend most of our time there.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of times in this work and in just being naturally in this industry, we're asking each other these questions all the time.
Totally.
And there's sometimes it's like, I'm not in a definitive, there's, I'm
Yeah.
working on some things, but there's a lot of things that are in process.
Right.
Right. And I think I'm deepening my appreciation for being continually in process.
Mm.
Because like you said, then you get to an end point and then the process starts all over
Right.
again. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so it's almost like this, when you were just talking about it being a conversation, I got the imagery of like an inhale and an exhale.
Yes.
And it's this like, it's the in between.
Yeah.
It's like the
Oxygen coming in. Actually, yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know where in that process you are yet.
Right.
And you're like, I don't have a definitive or clear answer. I just know I am here. And
Yes.
that's where I think life says, again, come back to the present. Just be here now and
Yeah.
release the need.
So we
to
just
know.
tied that to three different things. The cycle of breath, to the cycle of the seasons, to the cycle of life, all mirror each other. They're just at different degrees.
Yep.
Right. And so I think an understanding of all of those things helps you find appreciation both in the micro and the macro.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, and just like a daily practice for me, because I love breath, and breath is for me such a teacher and a connector to these other, my multidimensionality.
Sure.
It's, if I can bring awareness to my breath, which is always with me, I can tap into the wisdom I already have, that's already within, that I don't have to go out looking for. It's like, what is that that's already within me? That actually it's okay to be on the exhale or to be on the inhale. And actually all of it's serving, all of it's necessary.
Yes.
It's only in my judgment of it that makes it wrong.
The damn judgment.
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
cool. So for going back to leadership real quick, aside from presence and maybe courage, what skill, characteristic, and or mindset do you think is essential for a leader to possess in order to create like maximum impact?
Yeah. First one is self-awareness. The second one is extremely linked to courage, because I think leaders go first.
They do.
Right? So if I have a saying that I will never ask my clients to do something I'm unwilling to do myself. I think a true leader is on the front line. It's the one that's leading the charge into battle. It's not the one that's like, everyone go first, and then I'll be the one you guys all protect and get around me. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's saying, I will go where no one else is gone. I will, and I can only lead people to places I have been myself. So willingness, I think, is what it would come down to. And what I think being coachable is all about is willing to say, I
don't
show
know,
up.
or I don't know.
Or I don't know.
Yeah.
It's willing to say,
I love you.
I love you. It's willing to say, me too.
Mm-hmm.
It's willing to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And to go first. It's being willing in a crowded room of investors to say, hey, this is the idea and the vision I have, and I don't know if you guys are gonna be on board with it.
Yeah.
But this is what I really feel called to share. You know, it's like, it's being willing to be seen. Because you become the reference point as a leader for everyone in your tribe, everyone in your community to, like, where are you leading people? What are you leading?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So willingness to go first, to be wrong, to say the thing, to initiate the conversation, to let go of the way you used to do things, to embrace a new way of adapting and innovating.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can be that without also being present, without also being courageous. And Brene Brown says, you know, courage, the root word of courage comes from cur, which is the heart. So you have to be in your heart and be connected to your heart in order to genuinely make an impact. Because I think we've all experienced leadership, quote unquote leaders, that are disconnected from those things,
Mm-hmm.
and it falls hollow. I would rather follow someone who admits that they're, I don't even necessarily say broken, but like doesn't have it all together, than someone who pretends
Yeah.
all day.
Right. You almost can tell in their tonality and even in their actions.
Posturing
Yeah,
and
exactly.
all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a
So
level of
authenticity.
humility and groundedness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? I'm curious. What do you
For
think?
traits,
Yeah.
so skill, characteristic, or mindset. So since I can't use courage,
Yeah.
I think I'm writing a book all on communication,
Cool.
and it's for leaders, and so I'll share one of those 5. There's like 5 C's, but aside from courage, I think the second most important is curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity for how you work, how someone else works,
Totally.
how things are put together, curiosity for what's going to come,
Mhm.
for what this moment can be, for how far you can go, right? I think when we keep that center, we ask more questions than we give answers.
Mhm. We listen more than we talk.
Yes, we replace assumptions with open-mindedness.
Yeah.
And when we're more open through our curiosity, we receive more data, we receive
Mhm.
more information that allows us to make better decisions, in my opinion.
100%.
And so when we make those better decisions, we are more accurate with how we perceive things,
Mhm.
and in communication, which I think a large part of leadership is the ability to influence, to communicate, to see, hear, and understand people. When we're curious about them, we're less focused on ourselves.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is another key component to presence through curiosity, is like, tell me about you. What's your story? Where do you come from? What's important to you?
Totally.
What are your fears? How can I support you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your values? Like,
I care.
Yeah.
I care to know you.
Right.
Like, isn't that funny that, like, I think one of the characteristics of a leader is that they care
Yes.
enough to like listen and to show that their level of care through their ability to be present, their ability to listen, adapt, and implement the things that they've learned.
Right.
Because I think we also live in a culture and society where it's like, whoever cares less wins, right? Or it's like, it's
because
cool
emotions
not to
are
care.
liabilities, or if I care too much about you, then
I'm
it's
like,
going to
it's cool to
complicate
care.
things.
Give a damn, please.
Yes.
Like, about something.
We need more emotional intelligence, so we
Yes.
need you to feel.
Yeah, totally. But curiosity is I think right on the money, and because it shows that one of the things one of my mentors, David Meltzer, says is be more interested than interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that becomes, if you do that and you enter into conversations with the intent to get to know someone, not for what they can do for you, but who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and how you can serve them, then your presence becomes compelling.
Yes.
And you didn't do anything.
Yeah, because it's not even about you.
It's not.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a compelling leader,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden you just became way more compelling in your curiosity and in your, maybe even in your silence, than in your soapbox.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. Beautiful. Cool. Well, as we wrap up here, is there anything that you feel the audience needs to hear that's coming through that you want to share? And then after that, we can talk about where they can find you and how they can get, into your ecosystem.
Yeah. Oh man, I would just say, I think being willing to be coachable, to not know it all, to be curious,
Mm-hmm.
to be interested, isn't a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strength. It makes you more of a leader, makes you more human. It makes you more relatable and real and authentic, and more positioned to become truly great, whatever you want to be and whatever you want to do. So to really allow yourself to adapt the mentality that is one of the greatest skills you could have, is to walk into the situations and circumstances in your life and say, what can I learn?
Mm-hmm.
What is this showing me? what's working, what's not. That's what it means to be coachable. And from that, we get better. And we can develop lives and relationships and careers and health that is sustainable.
Yeah.
Success that is sustainable. It's not just this, you hit a peak and you win for a little bit. I want people to develop lives that are, when they look back over the course of their life, they're like, I was living and operating at a high level in all these areas of my life. And sure, we will go through the peaks and valleys, but sustainability only happens when you're willing to continually learn.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I always say is like the one constant will be that there's always something. I will never have arrived. I'll never know it all. And if you can let go of the need to know it all, then you're so much closer to the success that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Than you think. So
beautiful.
Continue
you
to do that. Yeah.
So where can everyone find you? What's the easiest place?
Oh man. Definitely connect with me on social. I'm the Tori Gordon on Instagram and TikTok. Hang out a lot on those two platforms. I've got the Coachable podcast. You can definitely come over there, hang out with us. We interview cool people like yourself, and then ToriGordon.com if you want to learn anything else about my programs, working with me, breath work, tools and resources to unlock your next level. That's what I'm doing. Come hang out on my side of the internet. I would love to get to know you. Yeah.
Well, keep leading from the front. Thank you for your wisdom today. Thank you for your presence. And I was excited to co-create with you today, and I think we created some magic. So for sure. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It was a fun time. This is the crescendo, the ending.
That's it. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries.